Hello digital illustrators. I'm going to do the gene drawing demo quickly here so you can use it as a reference as you're pursuing your gene project. You'll be able to stop and start the recording as needed. So I have a letter size artboard. I have it turned to landscape position by clicking on my artboard tool and choosing landscape. I have brought in a reference image that is currently on my bottom layer. I'm going to lock that layer, and I have added an additional layer here, layer 2, that I'm going to be drawing my gene on. My rulers are turned on at the top and sides by going under View, Rulers, Show. This will say Show Rulers. Once my rulers are active, then this says Hide. I also want to make sure that my guides are locked. So this should say Unlock Guides. If it says Lock Guides, click on it so our guides are locked when we drag them in. So the first thing I'm going to do is click and hold and drag in a guide and drop it right on that center front seam. Then I'm going to switch to my pen tool. I'm going to make sure I have no fill, and I'm going to choose a stroke color of red, kind of this reddy pink so you can clearly see it. And I'm going to make my stroke weight about 3. So I'm going to start on this upper part of the waistband. I'm going to click once to set the first point and click once at the bottom of the waistband to set the second point. Then out here I'm going to click and hold and drag out those Bezier curve handles, and I'm going to work my way down the outside leg of this pant. The pant is slightly pegged, so I've got an extra point here that's going to help create that curved shape. And then the bottom of the jean, I'm just going to go straight across, and then I'm going to come up the inside leg. I can see they've kind of folded some of the inseam behind there, so I'm just going to guess, and then I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to drag out those handles sideways just a little bit. Then I'm going to come back to my toolbox, and I'm going to switch to a selection tool to stop the draft. I'm going to click and hold. Whoops. I'm going to click on my direct selection tool. Click here, and I'm going to adjust this shape just a little bit. It's kind of sharp here. I'm going to smooth that out. Okay. So then if I hide my reference layer, I've got a pretty good one-leg jean. I want to make sure I do any editing before I reflect it, because I don't want to have to make those same edits to both sides. So I'll do a little more cleanup. And then I switch to my selection tool. I click, make sure that path is selected. And then I'm going to click on my reflect tool, which is O. I'm going to click once on my guideline. That sets my point of reflection. I'm going to click and hold on the path, adding Option and Shift, and duplicating that leg to the other side. I'm going to switch back to my direct selection tool, and I'm going to select first this point. I'm going to hold down Shift, select the second point, and I'm going to use the key command, Command J, to join them. Now my back waistband rises up just a little bit. I'm going to add a point at the center back. I'm going to use key command A to switch to my direct selection tool. Click and hold, and I'm just going to push that up just a little bit. And then I'm going to switch to my anchor point tool by using Shift C, and I'm going to give it just a little bit of curve back there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now I'm ready to move on to some of my internal elements. I'm going to use a 1-point stroke for these. I'm going to switch back to my pen tool. I'm going to click to set my first point for the top of the waistband. Click and hold, add Shift, draw out those Bezier curve handles to the left and the right, release my mouse, then my Shift key, and finish the top of the waistband by clicking over here. I don't want to click directly on the path that makes the outline, because Illustrator will try and join this path to that path, and we don't want that. We want this path to be totally separate. It just lives kind of in front of this outline. Okay. My waistband is the same width as it goes around the body, so I can click and hold on this path, hold down Option and Shift, and I'm duplicating, and then I release my mouse and release my keys. I have a little cleanup on the edge to do to make sure that's reaching the sides, and there's my waistband. Switch back to my pen tool. I'm going to put in that front, oops, I joined it. I forgot to join these 2 points. I'm going to click and select both with my direct selection tool and click Command J to join. A little bit of point cleanup here to do down here. Just want to move that point over, move this point over. Now I'm ready to add that front rise seam. And then I'm going to add my top stitching for the fly front opening. So I'm going to do this by making a single path. Don't use very many points when I do this. And then I'm going to select that path and I'm going to make it about 3 points. Then I'm going to go under Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. And that turns it into a filled object with no stroke. So I'm going to hit the double-headed arrow at the bottom of my toolbox, and that flips the fill and stroke. So now I have a pink stroke with no fill. I go back to my stroke palette. I'm going to change this to 0.5. I'm going to put a round cap on it and change it to a dashed line of 2 with a gap of 2. So that is a pretty good top stitching. It might be a little big for this. Maybe I'll go a dash of 1 and a gap of 1. That looks a little better. So if I go to my layer palette and turn off my reference image, that looks pretty good. There's a little cleanup at the tips. We kind of want the top stitching to, we don't want to see that end on it. We can clean that up. Okay, so now I'm ready to start working on information on one leg that will be reflected to the other leg. I'm going to switch back to my pen tool. I'm going to click Command. That allows me to go back to the selection tool I used previously. I'm going to click on this path here because that is the color I want to use, and it's going to populate my appearance palette. It's going to change this to a stroke of 1. So now I release Command and I've got my pen tool. I click to set the first point on my pocket, the second point, and then all the way over to the side seam. And I have a side seam here that I will need to draw as well. But I'm going to go ahead and do my dotted lines here that are going to be the top stitching on my pocket. I'm going to go ahead and draw these as 2 separate paths. Just do a little corner cleanup here. Looks pretty good. Okay. Now I'm going to add this out seam that I can see wrapping around here. It kind of starts to fade away to nothing towards the bottom. I may make this outline stroke just a little lighter. So I'm going to do a 1-point stroke here. Click and hold. And this is just the out seam on the pant. It rolls slightly to the front. And that's because the back of the jean on the thigh and through the hips is wider than the front of the jean. So there's a little tiny row of top stitching here. It's hard to see in my reference image, but it comes down from the waistband along here and stops about here with a bar tack. So I'm going to click on this dotted line. Again, that's going to populate my appearance with a 0.5 dashed line, so I don't have to type all that in manually. I'm going to switch back to my pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a line along here down to about here. And this is where the bar tack is placed. So now I'm going to draw some of my trims. I've got a rivet here, I've got a bar tack, and I've got a belt loop. So to make our rivets, I'm going to use the ellipse tool. I'm going to click and hold down Shift and drag out this circle. I want to give it a stroke of black and a fill. You can use brown or you can use a gold, something to kind of indicate that color that might be brass. I want to make sure my stroke is solid. I'm going to change it to a 0.75. I'm going to click on this rivet to be. I'm going to Command C to copy and Command F to paste in front. So I have 2 circles, one on top of the other. With that top circle selected, I'm going to use my scale tool. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to enter like 40%. And if I tick the preview box, I can see that it's going to make that top circle 40% smaller. So if I click off, I wind up with something like this. You'll notice that the stroke weight has scaled on the smaller circle. That is because if I double click on this, I have the scale strokes and effects checked, and that will scale the stroke weight proportionately. So this is our rivet. I'm going to select that. I'm going to group it, Command G to group it. That's also available under Object Group right here. And then I'm going to scale it down just a little bit using my selection tool and the Shift key until it's about the right size in proportion to my gene. So I'm going to put one copy up here. Then I'm going to click on that copy. I'm going to hold down Option, and I'm going to drag down a copy to the gene, and I'm going to duplicate that one to both sides of my pocket so I have the rivets on there. I also need a snap and a buttonhole for the front. For this project, don't worry so much about the buttonhole. Just go ahead and draw out another circle for that. It's a snap or a gene button, depending on what kind of gene you're working on. Okay, so now we're going to do the bar tack. I'm going to switch to my pen tool. I'm going to make sure there's no fill. I'm going to make sure the stroke is about a 0.5. And I'm going to draw a very short line. I'm going to zoom up on this. So this line is 0.5 with a cap, with a rounded cap. With this line selected, and make sure you're using either the main selection tool or the group selection tool so the whole line is selected, I go under Effect, Distort and Transform, Zigzag. This opens the zigzag palette. Change this to smooth. Change the size to relative. This allows us to make a shallower zig and zag. And then I'm going to increase my ridges per segment. This is the amount of zigging and zagging that happens between each point. And you want a fair amount so that we can see that this is a stitch going back and forth in there. And we don't want it so wide that it's too chunky. So try and get it kind of proportionate to what is visible on your gene. So this, I'm making it at a larger scale, and then I'm going to scale it down for use on the gene itself. I'm going to hit OK. And then I want to expand this so that it's editable as a path. So with it selected, I'm going to choose Object, Expand Appearance. Okay. I'm going to select it and switch to my selection tool, and I'm going to scale it down just a little bit more. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take a copy of that and put it on my gene here. And then I'm going to put another copy up with my rivet. So these are kind of my trim components I'm making. Now I'm going to make the belt loop. I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle that's about the same size as my belt loop. I'm going to give it a 1-point stroke. And then I need to add top stitching to this. So I'm going to click on my top stitching here that I've already been using. I can check my appearance palette. It loads a 0.5 dashed line in there. Switch to my pen tool, and then I'm going to draw one line of top stitching on one side, and then I'm going to click and holding Option and Shift, and I'm going to duplicate that to the other side. And maybe this belt loop might be a little narrow, so I'm just going to make it a little wider. Now the belt loop itself needs to float in front of quite a bit of other details, and in this case overlap the bottom of my waistband. So I'm going to select this rectangle, and I'm going to give it a white fill. You can do it from the color palette that automatically opens. If your swatch palette is open, you can choose the white there. And then the last thing I need to do is put my bar tack at the bottom. You can kind of see a faint bar tack there. So I'm going to copy another bar tack. I'm going to hit R for rotate and rotate it sideways. And then I'm going to move that bar tack into position on the bottom. It's a little long, so I'm going to delete just a couple pieces off the end. And I'm going to move it into position. I'm going to go ahead and change. Eventually I will change all the paths in here to black, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now on my belt loop. And then I'm going to select all of this and I'm going to group it using Command G. So now when I select this belt loop with my selection tool, the entire belt loop comes as one unit. So I'm also going to put that up above here. I might make one adjustment. I'm going to move that over just a little bit. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going to select that belt loop. I'm going to copy and paste it using Command C, Command V. Then I'm going to put it here on my jean. I'm going to hit R for rotate, and you'll notice the rotate crosshairs automatically pop up in the middle. And so I'm going to click and hold and just rotate that slightly so the top of the belt loop is parallel to the top of my waistband. Okay, we have just one more bit of detail to put on here. There should be a row of top stitching at the bottom of the waistband. So I'm going to select this bottom waistband cut line, click and hold. I'm going to move it up just a little bit to duplicate that line. I'm holding Option to duplicate it. I'm selecting the eyedropper tool. That path is still selected, and then I click on my top stitching anywhere and it populates, changes that line to the line I eyedroppered. Okay, so this is pretty good. I'm going to move these up a little farther so they're out of my way. Oops. Go over there. Now we're ready to duplicate all of these details to the other side. Oh, I do need to put some top stitching at the bottom. And then if I wanted to, I could also add any kind of inseam stitching as well. Okay, so I want to reflect most of this data to the other leg. I'm going to select the outline. I'm going to lock it by using Command 2 or choosing Object Lock Selection. And then I also want to lock my waistband pieces as well. So I am just clicking and holding with my group selection tool and dragging out a square, and anything inside that square is selected. I'm going to lock that as well using Command 2. And I may as well do that to my front fly and my button so I don't accidentally select those things. Then I click and hold and drag out a big bounding box, a big marquee around this right leg, and I've selected all these things that I have drawn. I'm going to select my reflect tool. I'm going to click on my guideline, then click and hold, adding Option and Shift and copying all of that to the other side. Okay. Then I want to go under Object, Unlock All. Now I'm going to hide my reference image, and I'm going to change all of my pink drawing into a black drawing. So I'm going to select the pink drawing. I'm going to choose Select, Same Stroke Color. And that's going to select everything that's pink on my drawing and allow me to change it using my swatch palette to black. Okay, so there's my front view. I'm going to go ahead and do my back view very quickly. Okay, now that we have our front and our back view, we're ready to set up for our side view. So I want to make sure my front and back view are in line. I'm going to select both. First of all, I need to group my back. Make sure everything is unlocked. And then group all of these back pieces under Object Group. And then I can select this one by clicking on that outside path. Holding down Shift, I can select the second one. This top control panel will change if the control panel is not showing. Go under Window, Control, make sure that control bar is checked. I want to choose this icon here, the vertical align bottom. And if I click on that, I know these are perfectly lined up, completely in alignment. And that's what we want as we start to work on our side view, because we're going to be drawing in a series of guidelines. So the first guide I want you to bring in, click and hold and drag and drop at the bottom. This is going to be the bottom of our pant. The next guideline, I want you to click and hold and drag in and drop it at the bottom of the center front waistband. Next guide, click and hold, bring it in, drop it at the top of the center front waistband. Next guide, drag and drop it in at the bottom of the waistband at the side seam or the center back if you can see it in your front view. And then click and hold and drag and drop to the top of the back waistband. So you wind up with 4 lines very close together. And then I like to put in one additional line that's here in the thigh. This kind of indicates where the leg is getting widest. Okay, now with this set of lines in here, I'm going to remove my fill in my toolbox, and I'm going to make sure I just have a black stroke. I'm going to switch to my pen tool, and I'm going to start here on the line that lines up with my front waistband. Or I can start at the back, top waistband, but you need to be working on, the top of the waistband. So I'm going to click to set the first point. I'm going to click to set the second point. This is a side view. It's this location on the back view or this location on the front view. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom of my waistband, which is this guideline here. So this represents the width of my waistband. And then I'm going to shave out the buttocks of the jean. I'm going to come down here right above this line where my thigh is, and I'm going to drag out some handles. And then I'm going to come down to the hem. Now this is a pegged jean, so I want the opening to be about the same width as those, and then I'm going to come back out here, and I may need to add some more curve data over here to kind of get this pegged shape. Then I'm going to come up here. I'm going to come back up and close this. Now, once it is a complete path, complete shape, I can move these things around to adjust the overall shape. If I want to change the way I drew this back, I can switch to my anchor point tool and click and hold, and I can readjust those curves. Down here, I think I need another point to kind of create this pegged shape of a leg. I'm going to switch to my add point tool. I'm going to click and add a point there, and then I'm going to switch back to my direct selection tool. I'm going to grab that point and move it out just a little bit. And so that helps give me that shape of a wider leg coming into a narrower opening at the bottom. And this one I think I might move out a little bit too. So get as close as you can with the side view. Don't feel like you have to hit it perfectly that first time around, but that gives us a pretty good side view. Then I'm ready to start putting in my other details. I'm going to get the rest of my waistband in here. I'm going to do my bottom waistband. I'm using this guideline here for the bottom of the waistband at the front, and this guideline here which lines up with the bottom of the waistband at the back. I can go ahead and put my top stitching on by duplicating that waistband line and then eyedroppering my top stitching stroke. Then I'm ready to put in my side seam. I'm going to click on that solid line again so it's repopulating that appearance palette. Switch to my pen tool. I'm going to click to set the first point and then click down here. I'm holding down Shift to try and get that line as straight up and down as possible. So now I've got to move my side seam back just a little bit, and this may This location may make me want to make some changes here, so I'm going to select that point and this point. I'm going to move them forward just a little bit because the out seam, the side seam should be straight up and down and pretty much on the side of the pant, slightly to the front because the back of the leg is a little wider. And then I've got this little bit of top stitching and that bar tack to add, so I'm going to add this little bit of top stitching, and then I'm also going to add a bar tack. I'm just going to copy this bar tack from the top, Command V to paste it right here. Okay. Then I have this back yoke detail. I'm just going to draw that on a solid line from here to here. And then I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool. I'm holding down Option. I'm duplicating that line. Switching to my eyedropper tool, which is key Command I. Putting that top stitching on there, and then I'm just going to duplicate that top stitching line so it matches the top stitching I've got going on in the back. Then I'm going to select this pocket. I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm going to Command X to cut it out of this group and Command F to paste it in front. And I'm going to use my main selection tool to move it into position. And I know that it's supposed to be parallel to this line on the back, so I need to make a few adjustments here to these points. I've locked my outline so I can select all three of those at once. Okay, I'll clean this up in a moment. I'm going to come to the front here. I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool. I'm going to select, draw a little marquee here box, and it's going to select the outline, this side seam, and all of this. I'm going to lock it by going under Object Lock Selection. And I'm going to do the same here on the waistband and lock those pieces as well. And that allows me to do a selection of these items. Command C to copy, Command V as in Victor to paste, and then I want to Command X to cut it out of the group because it's still in the group with the front pant, and Command F to paste in front. And then I can just move it right into position here, and I don't have to redraw those features. Then I can, using this group selection tool, I can click once, twice, 3 times on that belt loop and I get all the pieces, and then I can copy and paste, Command C, Command V, and I can put that side belt loop in position here. Now back to this pocket, I'm going to select the pocket and I'm going to use my knife tool. It's underneath the eraser tool, and I'm just going to trace this back rise seam, and it's going to cut my pocket off. So it cuts that piece off. I don't have to do anything. This is still a complete shape, so if I wanted to make the pockets contrast, I could, and then I delete that. I delete that. Clean this one up. This guy I can delete, and that guy I can delete. So I'm just deleting the points. I'm using the direct selection tool to delete the points. For me, that takes less time than redrawing this pocket, and it keeps it similarly to this pocket here that we already drew. Now we can zoom out, take a look at our drawing. I need to add little hem stitching at the bottom. This is a single row of top stitching. And that looks pretty good. So one thing you want to be sure and do is whatever is on the front, we want to see that on the side, and whatever's on the back, we also want to see that on the side. So if you've got top stitching on the waistband on the front, we should see it on the side view and on the back view. And that is how you draw the jean.